The birth of hip-hop. Hip-hop was not born in a studio or a corporate office.
It began at a party, a basement party in the Bronx, in 1973. The story starts with a young Jamaican immigrant named Clive Campbell,
Better known as DJ Cool HERC, on August 11th, at 1520 Sedgwick Avenue. He set up his sound system for a back-to-school party thrown by his sister.
but instead of just playing records, HERC did something new.
He isolated the drum breaks, those funky, high-energy sections of songs, and looped them using two turntables.
While the beat played on, kids danced harder. They didn't know it yet, but they were witnessing the birth of a cultural revolution.
In these early days, hip-hop was not just about music. It was a movement, a voice rising out of poverty, crime, and neglect.
The Bronx was burning. Buildings were crumbling. Politicians had abandoned the borough. But the youth were building something powerful.
Something that didn't require money, only passion, creativity, and grit. Four elements took root: DJing, MCing, breakdancing, and graffiti.
Each represented a different voice, a different rhythm, a different way to resist silence.
While HERC pioneered the sound, others followed.
Grandmaster Flash brought precision.
Afrika Bambaataa gave the culture structure and unity. He called it the Zulu Nation, a movement for peace, pride, and identity through music. MCs began to speak over beats.
Not just party rhymes, but stories, jokes, battles, and pride. What started as crowd control became a new form of poetry.
The voice of the unheard, rising above concrete and sirens. Hip-hop wasn't just a genre.
It was survival. It was style. It was resistance dressed in rhythm.
And in the shadows of broken neighborhoods, a spark was lit, one that would grow into the most influential cultural movement of the modern world.
The golden age of hip-hop.
As the 1980s moved forward, hip-hop began to evolve.
What started as parties and street performances was now becoming sharper,
More lyrical, and more ambitious.
This period, often called the golden age of hip-hop, stretched from the mid
1980 seconds into the early
1990 seconds.
and it redefined what the culture could be.
In this era, lyricism exploded.
Artists were no longer just rapping to keep a party alive.
They were crafting verses with meaning, rhythm, and complexity.
Rakim, with his calm delivery and poetic timing, changed what it meant to rhyme.
KRS-One used his voice to teach, to challenge injustice, to speak truth to power. Public Enemy came with thunder, telling America what it refused to hear. Production also changed. Sampling became an art form. DJs and producers like Marley Marl, DJ Premier, and the Bomb Squad weren't just looping breaks.
They were building sonic collages, layering funk, soul, jazz, and news clips into something entirely new.
This was also the rise of powerful groups.
Run DMC brought hip-hop into homes across the country. They wore street clothes, not costumes. Their success showed the world that this music was not a fad, but a cultural force.
Boogie Down Productions, Eric P. and Rakim,
A Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul,
NWA each had a different sound, a different message.
but all pushed hip-hop into new territory.
The golden age was fearless.
Artists talked about poverty, racism, violence, love, politics, and pride.
Some wanted to wake you up, others just wanted to make you move, but all of it felt urgent, alive, and real.
This era also gave birth to some of the most respected battle rappers.
Diss tracks and lyrical feuds not out of hatred,
But out of competition.
iron sharpening iron, the MIC became a weapon and a tool, used to claim respect and territory in the culture. More than anything, the golden age was about creativity without boundaries.
There were no formulas.
No one sound, just innovation. And even today,
Many consider this the moment when hip-hop proved it was not just surviving,
but rising, not just a genre,
but a culture with power, depth.
and something lasting to say. The rise of gangster rap.
By the late 1980s, hip-hop had matured, but the country was still divided. The East Coast had built the foundation.
But something raw was bubbling in the West. It wasn't polished. It wasn't poetic. It was blunt, violent, and real.
And soon, the world would know it as gangster rap.
At the heart of this shift was NWA.
A group of young artists from Compton, California. Ice Cube, Eazy-E, D.R.D.I., MC Ren.
DJ Yella, they weren't trying to be political.
They were just reporting life as they knew it.
Drug raids, police brutality, street wars, poverty with no escape.
Their music, especially the album Straight Out of Compton, didn't ask for permission.
It just kicked the door down.
FTHA Police wasn't a song. It was a declaration. And for many in power, it was a threat. The FBI sent letters.
News stations condemned it.
But to the youth living in neglected neighborhoods, it was honesty. Finally, someone was saying what they lived every day. Ice-T, another West Coast pioneer, added to this rising sound. His track 6 in the Morning is often considered one of the first true gangster rap songs,
painting pictures of street life with no filter, no apology. This movement was met with both outrage and success. Albums were banned in stores but sold millions. Critics attacked it, but fans embraced it. It was violent, yes, but it was also a mirror, a reflection of what society often ignored.
Even as controversy followed, gangster rap evolved.
Tupac Shakur emerged a poet, an activist, a firebrand.
He could speak about his mother's pain in one verse, then rage against injustice in the next. His music wasn't just gangster. It was emotional, political, human.
On the other side was Snoop Dogg, smooth, laid back,
with a voice that slid over Dio's G-Funk production like smoke.
Together, they shifted the sound again, blending street stories with funk, melody, and swagger. Gangster rap wasn't about glorifying crime. At its core, it was about survival, about the choices people made when they had no good options.
It was gritty because the streets were gritty.
It was aggressive because the world they came from demanded it, and whether you loved it or hated it.
One thing was clear: hip-hop was no longer just music. It had become America's loudest, rawest voice of rebellion.
East Coast versus West Coast era.
By the mid-1990s, hip-hop had become more than music.
It was business,
culture, identity, and power. But as the genre exploded, so did tensions. What began as regional pride turned into a bitter,
tragic rivalry that would change hip-hop forever.
On one side was the East Coast, the birthplace of hip-hop. New York artists like Nas, Wu-Tang Clan,
and the Notorious B.I.G. held down the city with lyrical sharpness and gritty street tales. Labels like Bad Boy Records,
led by Sean Puffy Combs, were reshaping the industry with flash,
hooks, and crossover appeal. On the other side, the West Coast was on fire.
Death Row Records, run by Suge Knight, had become a powerhouse. With Dr.I.'s production, Snoop Dogg's cool flow, and Tupac Shakur's explosive presence, they dominated charts and headlines.
What began as competition escalated with subtle jabs in interviews, radio appearances, and lyrics.
Then came the infamous moment, the 1994 shooting of Tupac in New York. He survived, but he didn't forget.
In interviews and in songs,
he blamed Bad Boy, accused Biggie, and stoked the flames of war. Hit 'Em Up wasn't just a diss track. It was a declaration of hostility. Lines were crossed. Respect was gone. The media poured fuel on the fire, framing it as East Coast versus West Coast,
as if it were two armies and not two record labels.
Behind the scenes, tension grew.
Concerts were cancelled. Rumors of retaliation spread. And then, tragedy struck.
In 1996,
Tupac was shot and killed in LA's Vegas. Just 6 months later,
in Los Angeles, Biggie was murdered too. Two of hip-hop's greatest voices silenced, not by lyrics, but by bullets.
The aftermath was a wake-up call.
Artists, fans, and executives realized that the rivalry had gone too far. It had become personal, violent, and deadly. The East Coast and West Coast scenes both mourned.
What had started as pride had ended in loss. And yet, their deaths didn't kill hip-hop. If anything, they proved how powerful it had become.
These were not just rappers. They were icons, poets, and legends. Their music still echoes, raw and untamed, across generations. The East Coast versus West Coast era was painful, but it also marked a point where hip-hop became global. No longer just regional noise, but a worldwide voice of rage, beauty, and truth.
The shiny suit era. After the pain of losing Tupac and Biggie, hip-hop found itself at a crossroads. The streets were still hungry, but the industry was shifting.
Record labels saw the money. Corporations wanted in. And soon, the sound began to change. Flash replaced fury.
Style replaced struggle. And so began what many call the shiny suit era. At the center of this transformation was Sean Combs,
also known as Puff Daddy,
or simply Diddy. His label, Bad Boy Records,
had already made waves with Biggie. But now, with Biggie gone, Diddy stepped into the spotlight himself. He brought with him polished beats, radio-friendly hooks, and music videos that looked more like luxury ads than street cinema.
Gone were the baggy jeans and combat boots. In their place came silk shirts, designer suits, bright lights, and champagne. It was hip-hop dressed in wealth, unapologetic, flashy, and smooth. Songs like Mo Money Mo Problems, Been Around the World, and Hypnotize dominated the charts. Even Sorrow, like in I'll Be Missing You, came wrapped in elegance.
For many fans, this was a new chapter.
a celebration of success, a moment of arrival. Artists like Maze, J.A. Rule, and LL Cool J leaned into this polished sound. Videos became glossier. Lyrics focused on money, love, and fame. Hip-hop was no longer just reporting the streets. It was escaping them. Meanwhile, Jay-Z began his rise. He was sharp, calculated, and business-minded. His debut, Reasonable Doubt, showed lyrical brilliance. But as his albums continued, he adapted. He could make club hits, street anthems, and executive deals, all in one breath. The sound shifted as well. Producers like Timbaland and the Neptunes introduced futuristic beats, heavy drums, and infectious melodies. Missy Elliott pushed visuals into wild, creative territory. Hip-hop was not only surviving, it was expanding into pop, R&B, and beyond. But this era also drew criticism. Some felt it lacked depth, that it traded message for money. Others saw it as the natural evolution, hip-hop growing up, moving out of the basement and into the boardroom. Whatever side you stood on, one thing was clear. This was the era that made hip-hop global. Radio, fashion, awards shows, and movie soundtracks were flooded with rap. It had become mainstream, for better or worse. The shiny suits would eventually fade, but they marked a time when hip-hop proved it could dominate charts, red carpets, and boardrooms without losing its voice completely. The mixtape era. As the 2000s began, the sound of hip-hop started to shift again. The glossy image of the shiny suit era faded, and something grittier returned. But it did not come from New York or Los Angeles. It came from the South, from Atlanta, Houston, Memphis, and New Orleans. A new sound was rising, and it came with hunger, style, and an unstoppable work ethic. At the same time, another movement was growing underground, the mixtape era. Before streaming, before YouTube, there were mixtapes. Not just playlists, but full bodies of work. Recorded in home studios, passed through street corners, barbershops, and CD burners. Mixtapes were the South's secret weapon, a way to reach the people directly, without waiting for radio or label approval. Lil Wayne was the face of this explosion. After years with Cash Money Records, he reinvented himself with a relentless stream of mixtapes. Dedication, Dart Route, No Ceilings, each one filled with wordplay, energy, and fire. Wayne rapped over every beat, outworked every rapper, and declared himself the best. And the world began to believe him. T.I. from Atlanta stepped in with trap music, giving a name to a sound that was already dominating southern streets. Heavy 808 drums, sharp hi-hats, and stories of hustle, survival, and pride. Trap was not just music, it was a lifestyle. Young Jeezy came next, with a voice like gravel and snow. His mixtapes and debut album turned Atlanta into a capital of street motivation. He did not just rap about drugs, he rapped like a boss, calm, confident, cold. In Houston, Mike Jones, Slim Thug, and Paul Wall brought chopped and screwed music to the surface. A style slowed down to feel heavy, dreamy, and raw. In Memphis, 3-6 Mafia mixed horror, chaos, and energy into a style that influenced entire generations. The South took what the industry ignored and made it powerful, and the mixtape became the new radio, a way for fans to hear unfiltered music, unpolished and real. Mixtapes weren't just about bars, they were about freedom. Rappers could speak without censorship. They could try new flows, build street buzz, and release music faster than the industry could keep up. This era birthed stars, shifted power, and redefined hustle. By the late 2000s, the South was no longer knocking at the door. It had kicked it in and taken the house. The Kanye Era, in the middle of the Southern wave and the mixtape flood. Another voice rose, loud, emotional, and impossible to ignore. He wore pink polos, carried a backpack, and made beats that sounded like soul records cracked open and reimagined. His name was Kanye West, and with him came a new chapter in hip-hop. When the college dropout dropped in 2004, it didn't sound like anything else. There were no trap drums or gangster tales. Instead, there were sped-up soul samples, church organs, and rhymes about insecurity, faith, education, and ambition. Kanye did not pretend to be street. He was honest, awkward, vulnerable, and that vulnerability hit hard. He rapped about working retail, struggling with self-worth, and losing his mother. About chasing dreams while doubting yourself. In a genre full of bravado, Kanye brought emotion, art, and risk. His production style shaped the sound of a generation, but it was his courage to be different that opened the door for others. With Kanye's rise came a wave of what many called conscious rap. It was not new, but it was now mainstream again. Artists like Luke Fiasco told stories that felt like novels. Layered, clever, political. His album Food and Liquor combined philosophy, street knowledge,
and social commentary with grace and fire. Common, already respected from the 1990s, found a new audience with Kanye's help, blending poetry, jazz, and love into something deeply human. These voices brought balance.
While the clubs were filled with trap beats, the headphones were filled with thought.
It was proof that hip-hop could still be smart, vulnerable, and honest, and still chart.
At the same time, Kanye kept evolving. Late registration was bigger and bolder. Graduation was stadium rap. And then came 808 Seconds and Heartbreak, a cold,
auto-tuned heartbreak letter
that would influence the next decade of hip-hop forever.
This era also helped launch future legends. Kid Cudi emerged as a voice of pain and dreams.
Drake began his rise by blending rap with melody, emotion with ambition. J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar were preparing to take the torch. The Kanye era was more than albums and fashion. It was a shift.
A reminder that hip-hop is not one thing.
It can be street and spiritual, flawed and fearless, insecure and iconic.
And though Kanye's path would twist and shake in the years to come,
the era he helped create gave hip-hop a new face.
One that looked inward, reached upward,
and reminded the world that emotion is power. The blog era.
As the 2000s came to a close, something shifted, not just in the sound of hip-hop,
but in how it was found, no longer trapped behind record labels or radio gatekeepers.
Artists turned to the internet, and the internet answered back.
What followed was a quiet revolution, often called the blog era. It began on music blogs, forums, and early platforms like DatPiff.
Two dope boys, Norite, and Liver mixtapes.
Suddenly,
unknown rappers from small cities could upload music, share links, and build followings without needing a record deal.
The audience was no longer passive.
They were curators, tastemakers, and digital street teams.
Drake emerged from Toronto,
combining melody and rap in a way that sounded both emotional and confident. His So Far Gone mixtape spread like wildfire online,
not through radio, but through bars,
downloads, and blog love.
J. Cole from North Carolina was another internet breakthrough. His mixtapes, especially the Warm Up and Friday Night Lights,
were filled with hunger, storytelling, and introspection.
They sounded like someone chasing greatness in real time. And then came Kendrick Lamar.
Hailing from Compton, Kendrick built slowly. Through tapes like Overly Dedicated and Section 80, he told stories that felt cinematic and raw. He rapped like someone carrying history on his back. His verses were layered, his delivery was sharp, and his message was clear. He was not here to play. The blog era also gave rise to experimental voices. Tyler, the Creator, and the Old Future Collective brought shock,
humor, rebellion, and creativity.
Their online presence was wild, unfiltered, and magnetic.
They created their own rules and pulled a new generation into their orbit. This era blurred lines.
Rappers became singers. Mixtapes felt like albums.
Fans found music through Twitter links, YouTube leaks, and Tumblr posts.
No suits, no filters, just connection.
Even veterans adapted.
Kanye embraced the internet rollout.
Jay-Z partnered with digital platforms. The underground was no longer underground. It was online. The blog era didn't just change how music was discovered.
It changed how artists thought.
They didn't have to wait to be chosen.
They could build from zero and watch it grow.
The streaming era.
By the mid-2010s, hip-hop had changed again.
Not just in sound, but in structure. Physical sales were down.
Mixtapes had moved online.
And a new era emerged.
One defined not by the streets or the blogs, but by streams.
Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and later TikTok became the new gatekeepers. Algorithms replaced A&R meetings. Virality mattered more than radio. The industry shifted beneath everyone's feet.
And hip-hop adapted faster than any other genre. In this new world, trap music became the dominant sound.
Born in Atlanta, trap had already taken root with artists like T.I., Jeezy, and Gucci Mane, but now it exploded worldwide through new voices.
Future brought darkness, melody, and pain over cold, hypnotic beats.
Migos introduced triplet flows at LIBS, and a style that influenced the entire industry.
Young Thug, with his elastic voice and fearless delivery,
broke every rule of rap vocals. Lil Baby rose with focus and urgency, proving that lyricism could live inside trap. Meanwhile, streaming allowed artists to release music constantly. No waiting,
no clearance, just a direct pipeline to fans. Mixtapes, albums, and singles blurred together.
The line between underground and mainstream faded. And then came TikTok. A single viral dance or challenge could make an unknown rapper famous overnight. Songs like Old Town Road by Little Nas
became global hits through memes and momentum. Suddenly, 15 seconds could launch a career. In this environment, artists became brands. They had to rap, but also entertain, post, engage, and keep moving. Some thrived.
Others burned out.
Attention became the currency, and everyone was chasing it.
Yet through the noise, real voices broke through. Kendrick Lamar released Damn, an album that won a Pulitzer Prize. J. Cole
Dropped projects with no features and still went platinum.
Drake became a global force, shaping the sound of an entire generation.
New scenes rose too.
Chicago drill evolved into UK drill. Brooklyn adopted it and made it its own.
Artists like Pop Smoke brought raw energy back to the mainstream.
Even as his life was cut tragically short, the streaming era also saw hip-hop become the most streamed genre in the world. It topped charts, filled festivals, and crossed every border. What began in the Bronx now echoed in Lagos, London, Seoul, and Sao Paulo. Even so, the streaming era gave power to the people.
Anyone could upload. Anyone could be heard.
And hip-hop, once locked out of the industry, now owned the house.
The globalization of hip-hop.
What started in the Bronx has become a global language.
From the streets of London to the clubs of Lagos, hip-hop now echoes everywhere.
In the UK, grime artists like Skepta and Stormzy gave voice to a new generation. In Africa, rap fused with local rhythms,
creating bold new sounds from Nigeria to South Africa.
France turned hip-hop into a voice of resistance. In Korea, artists mixed sharp flows with polished visuals,
launching K-hip-hop into the world.
Streaming made borders disappear.
A beat from one country could become a hit in another overnight.
Artists no longer needed permission, just Wi-Fi, vision, and heart. And through it all, the core remained.
Expression, struggle, pride, rhythm. Hip-hop adapted to every culture, yet never lost its soul.
Today, it's more than music.
It's a movement, global, unstoppable, and still growing.